Funny thing about this world, people think winning always makes noise. They think success has to be loud, flashy, undeniable. But what really disturbs them, what really gets under their skin, is silence. You didn't show off. You didn't chase attention. You didn't step into their race. And somehow, that's exactly what made them uncomfortable. Because while they were exhausting themselves, trying to prove something, you were building something. Quietly, patiently, without asking for validation, they kept looking for your moves, your reactions, your competition, but you gave them nothing. No drama, no comparison, no urgency. And that's what broke the pattern. Because when someone refuses to play the game, the players start questioning their own position. You didn't compete, but your growth became a mirror. And in that reflection, they started seeing how far behind they really are. Silence isn't empty. That's the first mistake people make. They think if you're not talking, not reacting, not announcing your every move, then nothing is happening. They assume quiet means weak, passive, irrelevant. But silence has a different kind of weight. It builds pressure in ways noise never can. When you stop explaining yourself, people start creating their own explanations. And those explanations are rarely kind. They fill the gaps with their insecurities, their doubts, their fears. They wonder what you're doing, what you're planning, why you're so calm when everything around you feels like a race. Your silence becomes a question they can't answer. And questions, they bother people. Because noise is predictable. Noise is easy to read. When someone talks too much, shows too much, reacts to everything, you can map them out. You know their next move before they make it. But silence hides intention. It hides growth. It hides transformation. And that uncertainty, it creates tension. While they're busy announcing their goals, you're quietly building yours. While they're seeking approval, you're removing the need for it. You're not playing for attention, you're playing for control. And control doesn't need an audience. That's where the pressure begins. They start watching you more closely, not because you ask them to, but because they don't understand you. You're not giving them the usual signals. No complaints, no bragging, no visible struggle, just consistency, just presence, just quiet movement forward. And it unsettles them, because deep down, people are comfortable when everyone follows the same pattern. Talk, show, compare, repeat. It keeps things balanced. It keeps everyone distracted. But when someone steps out of that pattern, without saying a word, it disrupts the entire rhythm. Your silence becomes louder than their noise. They start questioning themselves. Why am I trying so hard to be seen? Why do I need validation? Why does their calmness feel heavier than my effort? These aren't questions they want to face, but your silence forces them to. You're not competing with them, but your presence feels like pressure anyway, because silence removes distractions. It strips everything down to what actually matters. No excuses, no performances, just results forming in the background. And people can feel that, even if they can't see it yet. It's like standing next to someone who isn't trying to prove anything, yet somehow makes you feel like you have to prove everything. That's the power of silence. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend. It doesn't seek approval. It simply exists and lets others deal with what they feel around it. and most people aren't ready for that. They want reactions. They want confirmation that they're ahead, that they're winning, that they're being noticed. But when you stay silent, you deny them that comfort. You become unpredictable, untouchable in a way they can't quite explain. So they watch, they guess, they overthink, all because you chose not to speak. Most people don't chase growth. They chase recognition. They want the applause before the effort is even complete, the validation before the transformation has even begun. They measure their progress by how many eyes are watching, how many voices are agreeing, how many people are impressed. And the moment that attention disappears, so does their momentum. You chose something different. You stepped into a space where no one was clapping, no one was watching, no one was even aware of what you were building. And instead of slowing down, you became more consistent. That's the part they don't understand, because without validation, most people lose direction. They need someone to confirm they're on the right path. They need reassurance that their effort matters. But you removed that need. You stopped asking, "Am I doing enough?" and started deciding, "I will do what needs to be done." No audience, no approval, no external push, just internal discipline. And that kind of mindset, it doesn't just grow you, it separates you. Because when validation is your fuel, your growth becomes fragile. One negative opinion, one moment of being ignored, one lack of recognition, and everything starts to shake. Doubt creeps in. Motivation fades. Effort becomes inconsistent. You start adjusting yourself, not for progress, but for acceptance. You refused to play that game. You kept moving even when it felt invisible. Even when there was no feedback, no signs, no instant results. You trusted a process that nobody else could see. And that trust, it builds something stronger than confidence. It builds independence. Now your growth doesn't rely on anyone else's opinion. It doesn't pause when someone doubts you. It doesn't speed up just because someone praises you. It stays steady, controlled, focused, and that's what makes it dangerous. Because people can't influence something that doesn't depend on them. They can't slow you down with criticism if you're not seeking their approval. They can't distract you with praise if you're not chasing their attention. You become difficult to read, difficult to control, difficult to compete with. They start wondering why you're not reacting the way they expect, why their opinions don't seem to reach you, why their presence doesn't affect your pace. And the truth is simple. You're not building for them. You're building for something deeper. Something that doesn't need to be announced. Something that doesn't need to be proven in real time. You understand that real growth is often quiet, repetitive, even boring. It's not designed to impress people in the moment. It's designed to change you over time. While they're performing for attention, you're committing to transformation. While they're counting likes, you're counting discipline. While they're adjusting to stay relevant, you're staying consistent to become undeniable. And consistency without validation, it creates a different kind of presence. A presence that doesn't beg to be seen, but eventually can't be ignored. They may not notice your first steps. They may overlook your early efforts. They may even underestimate your silence. But what they fail to realize is that growth without validation doesn't slow down. It compounds. Every quiet effort stacks. Every unnoticed improvement builds. Every moment of discipline adds weight, until one day it's no longer subtle, and suddenly the same people who never saw you working start questioning how you got so far without them even realizing it. Competition is a trap most people walk into without thinking. From the beginning, they're taught to measure themselves against others. Faster than them, better than them, ahead of them. Everything becomes a comparison, and every move is made with someone else in mind. They don't even realize they've handed over control of their direction to the very people they're trying to outdo. You saw the pattern, and you stepped out of it. Because the moment you enter competition, your focus shifts. It's no longer about growth, it's about position. No longer about improvement, it's about comparison. You stop asking how far you can go and start asking how far ahead you are. And that question, it limits everything. When you're chasing someone, you're always reacting. You adjust your speed based on theirs. You measure your worth based on their progress. You celebrate only when you're ahead and doubt yourself the moment you fall behind. Your mindset becomes dependent, unstable, controlled by variables you can't fully manage. You refuse that dependency. You didn't need to be better than them. You needed to be better than who you were yesterday. And that shift, it changes the entire game. Because now, your progress has no ceiling created by someone else's pace. There's no finish line defined by comparison. There's only continuous movement, constant refinement, relentless focus on your own path. And that kind of focus, it's rare. While they're watching each other, calculating every move, trying to stay ahead, you're moving without distraction. No need to prove anything. No need to respond. No need to engage in a race that was never yours to begin with. That's what makes it unsettling for them, because competition gives people a sense of control. It gives them a way to measure where they stand. But when you remove yourself from that system, they lose their reference point. They can't figure out if they're ahead of you or behind you, because you're not standing on the same track. And that uncertainty, it bothers them. They start pulling you back into the game. Subtle comparisons, direct challenges, attempts to get a reaction. They want to see if you'll respond, if you'll engage, if you'll prove that you're part of the same race. Because once you react, once you compare, once you compete, you're back in their world. But you stayed out. You understood something they didn't. Competition can push you, but it can also limit you. It can motivate, but it can also distract. And for most people, it becomes a cycle they can't escape. Always chasing, always comparing, never fully satisfied. You chose a different kind of pressure. Internal pressure. The kind that doesn't come from others, but from your own standards, your own expectations, your own commitment to improvement. And that pressure, it doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't depend on who's around you or what they're doing. It stays constant. That's why your growth feels different. It's not reactive. It's intentional. It's not rushed. It's controlled. You're not trying to outpace anyone. You're trying to outgrow your past. And that process, it's slower in appearance, but stronger in foundation. They may sprint ahead for a while. They may gain attention, recognition, temporary advantage. But their pace is tied to the race. Yours is tied to discipline, and discipline doesn't burn out the way competition does. So while they keep looking sideways, checking positions, adjusting based on others, you keep moving forward without interruption. No distractions, no comparisons. No need to prove where you stand, because you're not standing anywhere. You're building something they can't measure, on a path they can't follow, using a mindset they don't understand. People don't like mirrors, not real ones. The kind that don't flatter, don't filter, don't adjust the angle to make them feel comfortable. They prefer reflections that protect their ego, not ones that expose it. And most of the time, they surround themselves with noise, distractions, and comparisons just to avoid seeing themselves clearly. Then you show up without trying to show anything at all. You don't talk much about what you're doing. You don't explain your process. You don't seek attention. You just keep improving step by step, quietly, consistently. And somehow, that's enough to shift the atmosphere around you. Because your progress starts acting like a mirror, not because you force it, but because it exists. When people see someone moving forward without excuses, without drama, without constant validation, it creates a contrast they can't ignore. It highlights the gap between effort and intention, between talking and doing, between potential and reality. And that gap, it's uncomfortable. They start comparing without meaning to, not in the usual loud, competitive way, but internally. Quiet questions begin to form. Why are they so consistent? Why don't they seem distracted? Why are they improving without making noise about it? What am I missing? You never asked them to question themselves. You never told them to look at their own habits, their own discipline, their own patterns. But your presence does it anyway, because when someone else is moving with clarity, it exposes confusion. When someone else is disciplined, it exposes inconsistency. When someone else is focused, it exposes distraction. That's what a real mirror does. It doesn't attack. It doesn't judge. It doesn't speak. It simply reflects. And reflection can be more powerful than criticism. Because criticism can be ignored. It can be argued with, dismissed, turned into noise. But a reflection, it stays. It lingers. It shows them something they already know deep down, but try to avoid. They see your discipline, and it reminds them of their procrastination. They see your patience, and it highlights their need for instant results. They see your silence, and it exposes how much they rely on noise. You didn't compete with them, but your growth made them feel like they were falling behind anyway. Because when someone is truly progressing, they don't need to chase others to create pressure. Their existence becomes enough. Their actions, even the quiet ones, start shifting how others see themselves. And not everyone reacts well to that. Some people feel inspired. They look at your progress and decide to raise their own standards. They accept the reflection and use it to improve. Others, they resist it. They try to downplay what you're doing. They question it, criticize it, ignore it, anything to avoid facing what it shows them. Because accepting the reflection means accepting responsibility. It means admitting that the gap they feel isn't because of you. It's because of them. And that's not an easy thing to face. So they create explanations. They tell themselves you had advantages, you got lucky. You're different, you're extreme. anything to make the reflection less clear, less accurate, less threatening. But no matter how much they try to distort it, the mirror doesn't change. Your progress stays real. It keeps moving, keeps building, keeps becoming more visible over time. And with every step forward you take, the reflection becomes sharper, harder to ignore, harder to deny. You don't need to point anything out. You don't need to compare, compete, or prove anything directly. Because the moment someone sees what becoming, they automatically start seeing what they are not. Most people are tired, and they don't even know why. They wake up drained, move through the day distracted, and end it feeling like they did a lot, but achieved very little. It's not because they lack ability. It's not because they don't have opportunities. It's because their energy is scattered, constantly pulled in different directions by things that don't deserve it. Reactions, opinions, comparisons, noise. They give their attention to everything. Every comment gets a response. Every situation demands emotion. Every small trigger turns into a mental storm, and slowly, without realizing it, they leak their energy into places that give nothing back. You stopped leaking. You started noticing where your energy was going, not just physically, but mentally. How much time you spent thinking about people who weren't thinking about you. How often you reacted to things that didn't actually matter. How easily your focus was broken by distractions disguised as urgency. And you made a decision most people avoid. You chose control. You stopped reacting to every opinion. You stopped engaging in every unnecessary conversation. You stopped proving yourself in situations that didn't deserve your effort. You didn't cut off the world. You just became selective about where your energy flows. That's when everything started to shift, because energy, when saved, doesn't disappear. It builds. It accumulates. It becomes something you can direct, instead of something that gets taken from you. While others are spending their energy trying to be seen, you're using yours to become stronger. While they're caught in endless cycles of reacting and explaining, you're staying grounded, focused, steady. You're not moving faster because you're doing more. You're moving smarter because you're wasting less. And that difference, it compounds. They might have the same 24 hours, the same potential, the same starting point, but they don't have the same control over their energy. And without control, effort becomes inefficient. It turns into motion without direction, activity without progress. You remove the excess. No unnecessary reactions. No wasted attention. No emotional spending on things that don't move you forward. And what's left is power. Not loud power, not aggressive, not something that demands attention. It's controlled, quiet, precise. The kind of power that shows up in consistency, in discipline, in the ability to keep going without burning out. Because you're no longer draining yourself to prove something. You're building yourself with intention. That's why your progress feels different. It's not forced. It's not rushed. It doesn't come with exhaustion or frustration. It comes with clarity, with focus, with a steady pace that doesn't collapse under pressure. Meanwhile, others start to feel the gap. They wonder why they're always tired, always distracted, always starting and stopping. They look at you and assume you're doing something extreme, something intense, something they can't handle. But the truth is simpler. You're just not wasting what they keep giving away. And that realization, it makes your presence heavier than it should be. Because when someone sees you moving forward without chaos, without burnout, without constant struggle, it forces them to look at their own habits, their own patterns, their own lack of control. You didn't take more energy than them. You just stopped losing yours. People are comfortable with noise. It reassures them. It gives them something to watch, something to react to, something to measure. Loud success fits into their expectations, big announcements, constant updates, visible effort, obvious wins. It's easy to understand, easy to accept, easy to categorize. Quiet success doesn't follow those rules. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't create a trail of obvious signals for people to track. It just builds, layer by layer, out of sight, out of conversation, out of reach. And because of that, it creates a different kind of tension. People don't know what to do with something they can't see clearly. They try to read you, but there's nothing obvious to read. No constant updates, no need to prove anything, no signs of desperation or urgency. Just steady movement, just calm presence, just results forming somewhere in the background without explanation. And that lack of visibility, it starts to bother them. Because when success is loud, it gives people time to adjust. They can watch your journey, compare themselves at every step, tell themselves they still have time, still have control. But when success is quiet, there's no warning. One day, you're unnoticed. Next day, you're undeniable. That jump, it feels sudden to them. Even though it wasn't sudden at all, they missed the process. They didn't see the discipline, the repetition, the small improvements stacking over time. They didn't notice the sacrifices, the focus, the consistency. All they see is the result, and without context, that result feels threatening, because it exposes how much can happen without noise. It challenges the belief that you need to be constantly visible to make progress. It questions the idea that attention equals growth. It disrupts the pattern they've been following, and people don't like when their patterns get disrupted. They start looking for explanations. They try to figure out how you got there without them noticing. They question the legitimacy of it, the fairness of it, the reality of it. Because accepting it means accepting that they've been focusing on the wrong things, that their noisy didn't equal progress. Your silence becomes unsettling because it represents something they struggle to maintain. Discipline without recognition, effort without applause, patience without immediate reward. These are things most people talk about, but few actually practice. And when someone is living it, it creates pressure. Not the kind you force on others, but the kind they feel within themselves. The kind that comes from realizing that progress doesn't need an audience. That growth doesn't require validation. That success doesn't have to be loud to be real. You didn't try to intimidate anyone. You didn't try to stand out or make people feel behind. But your quiet consistency did something louder than any words could. It removed excuses. Because it shows that it's possible to move forward without distraction, without constant recognition, without waiting for the perfect moment. And when people see that, they can't pretend they didn't know anymore. That's why quiet success feels heavier than loud success. It doesn't give people something external to focus on. It turns their attention inward, where the real questions are waiting.